Today, on this Lord's Day, we celebrate the ordination and installation of the new officers to this church governing body, our session. It was with this event in mind that I read and studied this passage from the Gospel of Mark this week, and that I discovered, I hope, what I discovered, it was a very good message, not only for those who are willing to come forward and take a leadership role in the church, but also all of us as we seek to discover again what it means to be a disciple of this multitasking Rabbi, Jesus. We all know what it's like to be under the gun, to be on a mission, getting the checklist and the to-do list accomplished in a given day. Having an organized approach to life keeps us generating accomplishments that may otherwise fall by the wayside. I remember once when David and I took our first trip together out to the Pacific Northwest. It drove me nearly batty that there was no agenda, no itinerary, no timetable, no rhythm to what seemed like chaotic madness in our drive. I made such a point of it, that the next time we headed out west, I received a detailed 5-page itinerary on each day's travel, when we would stop and how long we would take to be there. The mileage was on each day's travel log, and he even suggested about how long we should stop for bathroom breaks. When we were on the road on that trip, I was pretty happy actually with the agenda. It was firmly fixed, and my travel companion, though, at one point insisted as we were driving through South Dakota that we needed to stop for a brief time to view the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota. Looking at my watch and knowing that this interruption in our schedule would probably put us back, I protested, saying we will be driving until 10 p.m. if we stop. But David was driving and insisted that I would not want to miss this particular gem of South Dakota. But I only wanted to make the next stop as planned, since the Corn Palace was really not on my bucket list, if you know what I'm talking about. Tick the bucket, you've got things to go. As I found out, though, insisting on keeping a strict schedule can cause us to miss out on some of life's most interesting or valuable opportunities. Jesus was on his way to Nazareth to preach, and his disciples had probably had more than enough side trips to recognize that Jesus didn't seem to worry about timetables, calendars, or agenda. He didn't even wear a watch. He didn't wear one of those portable sundials that I'm sure they had back then. He slept in a boat while the disciples fought a storm that they had yet ever seen in their lives. He almost got them killed when he sent the demons flying, into a herd of pigs that then flew over a cliff and left the pig farmers without a source of income. Now, he's finally safe back home in his friendly territory, and the crowds are pressing in. Jairus, who is a wealthy leader of the synagogue, runs up to Jesus, throwing himself at his feet in the dirt, begging him to come and heal his 12-year-old daughter, who was gravely ill. You can almost see the disciples' eyeballs rolling back in their head. Here we go again, looking at their sundials and knowing that if he took off to heal this young daughter, they were going to get way behind schedule on their trip to Nazareth. But this was a Jewish leader, probably lots of money there, And it is a touchy situation, and so the disciples decide to keep their mouths shut. Now, people who had been around Jesus and saw this and heard Jairus plea for Jesus to come and heal his daughter, here this upstanding leader is throwing himself at his feet before this upstart of a healer. That probably news began to go quickly through the crowd as those closest began to whisper what they had heard to those further down the line, and those further down the line then began to get the news. It must have spread so quickly that way in the back of the line, an old woman who had been plagued with a hemorrhage for 12 years, her stained clothes making her an unclean woman, according to Levitical laws. And suddenly, she finds herself elbowing her way through the crowds without a hint of concern for her own safety, and she snuck up on Jesus before anybody had a chance to stop her. And she touched him. And she is stunned about her own actions and her bold approach to Jesus, so much so she immediately tries to lose herself in the crowd. But Jesus senses something has happened. Some power had left him. And ignoring the reality that the crowds were already pressing in on him from every angle, he calls out and says, "Who touched my clothes?" Again, the eyeball-rolling disciples look at him with an expression of, "You've got to be kidding, right? There are people all around you. There are a gazillion of folks. Look at these people. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" But the woman with the 12-year-long hemorrhage heard. She had an illness that was as old as that young girl who was dying was young. And she stepped back into her boldness and with humility approached Jesus again, this time without expectation that his magical robe would heal her, and showed herself to him and honestly admitted her audacity. Jesus notices, looks at this woman, looks at her blood-stained clothes, her rags, her bent-over self, her osteoarthritic hump on her back, and compassionately calls her daughter, adopts her as a member of his own family, and assures her that her faith, her boldness, her unstoppable belief in him had made her whole again. Now Jesus is in a really touchy situation. He has been touched by a woman considered to be ritually impure, and that has interrupted his trip to the home of Jairus. Now the daughter of the synagogue leader has died, or so the messengers come to tell them. You can almost see the relief in the disciples' faces. Well, now he won't have to go there. Maybe we can make it to Nazareth on time. But maybe Jairus would get so mad he might kill us before we get out of town. But then this never-in-a-hurry Jesus sees the poor rich man's heartbreak, and he grabs him by the shoulders and lifts him up and says to him, "Look, man, listen to this. Don't be afraid.